Good evening. I will now call to order the Gig Harbor City Council meeting of Monday, May 8th, 2023. The time is 5:33 PM. I will do a roll call from my far left. Councilmember Wook.
Here.
Councilmember Storsett is excused this evening. Councilmember Rodenberg.
Here.
Councilmember Likens. Here. Councilmember Henderson.
Here.
Councilmember Martin.
Here.
Councilmember Barber.
Here.
Great, thank you. If you would all please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we begin this council meeting, we would like to recognize that we are gathered on not only the ancestral and traditional lands of the Squabosh Band of the Puyallup Tribe of Indians, but also on the site of one of the largest and longest standing historic villages of their people, the original inhabitants of the Gig Harbor area. Council, are there any changes to the agenda this evening? Councilmember Wook.
Yes, I request to have items 2 and 5 removed from the consent agenda.
Okay, let me take a moment to get those. Okay. Josh, remind me if we take a vote on the consent, on the rest of the consent agenda now? Yes, okay. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
I
I
move
move-
to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Second.
Okay, I think that was Councilmember Rodenberg. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. Motion passes 6-0. Okay, so regarding item number 2, professional services contract for the Gig Harbor Sports Complex Phase 2 and 3 feasibility study. Councilmember Wook, would you like to state why you took this item off of the consent agenda?
I'd be happy to. Thank you, Mayor.
Mhm.
I asked to have this removed from the consent agenda after receiving an email from one of our citizens over the weekend who was concerned about a cumulative traffic and tree impact to the sports complex area that is not called for in the report. I did a very unscientific GIS measurement, and it seems to me that from the Costco roundabout to the Harbor Hill Drive extension roundabout, there are about 2,500 feet. Using this area is the retail complex, Costco, sports complex, phases 1A and B, Swiftwater Elementary School, the Y, the church area to be, and sports complex phase 3. While that seems like a lot of traffic for 2,500 feet. So I had a chat with Director Langham this morning, thank you. And he's going to explain to us a little bit how cumulative impacts work and if they were taken in this area. So thank you, Director Langham.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Director Langham, for being here.
You bet. So just to quickly summarize what you are seeing before you tonight, the proposed phase 2 and 3 feasibility study that's for you is a professional services contract. This contract, if approved, would allow staff, council, and the public to perform an alternatives analysis, review that alternatives analysis, and come up with a preferred alternative for the future of phases 2 and 3 at the sports complex. In addition to conceptual renderings that'll be prepared as part of the feasibility study, the city has been hearing, and Councilmember Wook noted it, concerns from more than just one resident, multiple residents, about some of the impacts that will come from phase 2 and 3 and whether or not they're being adequately addressed in the scope of work. So these include traffic. It includes stormwater impacts. It includes removal of trees and vegetation, and it includes lighting. So I just wanted tonight to give a quick overview of those impacts and discuss how either they've already been addressed from the staff's point of view or are being addressed either through current land use applications or future land use applications or this feasibility study itself. So I'm going to start with traffic. Just going to spend a few minutes reviewing how we got to where we are with the traffic that studies that we have, traffic modeling that we do, and then bring that around to see how that ties into the feasibility study for phases 2 and 3 of the sports complex. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to start by just talking about when we started to do a more detailed analysis of traffic impacts and when we started to utilize, not for the first time, but when we started to utilize and rely more heavily on traffic modeling. So that was about 2005. This is an aerial photo from 2005 of the Gig Harbor North area. You've got about 400 acres of treed area there. Except for we've got a little, Borgum Boulevard was just constructed recently, and you've got Albertsons, Target, Home Depot, and the shopping centers around there. Just as was done in 2005, when we started to pay very close attention and do detailed traffic analysis, we identified how many trips would come from development in this area. And so we put those numbers into a traffic model. A traffic model is a computer model that simulates based on basically 3 pieces of information that you put into it, just generally speaking. Those 3 pieces of information include existing trips, existing traffic, we call that background, future anticipated trips based on development patterns, development applications. Those development applications, as approved, go into what we call the pipeline trips. So you've got background trips, pipeline trips, and then the trips that are being proposed for an actual specific land use application. So that's future trips. So we started back in 2005 to establish what this traffic model would look like. And so we have a model that includes all of that information and all of that information as the city has grown. We do analyze these at each time we have development applications come in. We run a slew of trip generation reports through our traffic model. We identify where there might be congestion. That is based off of levels of service. These levels of service are identified in our transportation element. And it identifies for each intersection in the city, what is an acceptable level of service. Level of service is based off of delay of traffic or delay of vehicles at each intersection. I don't need to get into that. Well, we can talk about that at a future study session or something if we want to talk about delay and levels of service. But that's essentially what that model is doing, is it's going past and it runs the model. It says based on background information, based on pipeline information, based on these future trips, this is where you may have, or based on the levels of surface criteria, you will have failures, congestion. And so that's what we've been keeping track of for many, many years. And so this is no different. We have now in our area, in the existing, and I'll show you what it looks. I'll turn off the 2005 aerial. We can look at it today. So there's Gig Harbor North today. We have added into our traffic model the more than 1,500 homes that have been added in Gig Harbor North. We have in our traffic model, the Costco area, all the shopping centers around the Costco area. We have in our traffic model, the village at Harbor Hill. We have the YMCA. We have Swiftwater Elementary. It includes Heron's Key. It includes all these properties in the Gig Harbor North development that's considered the S section, the southern areas, S developments. So all of that is in our traffic model. And then pipeline trips. I'm sorry, let me back up. The village of Harbor Hill is not in the existing, it's in as not as an existing, it's in as a pipeline trip or pipeline traffic. So, so we've got existing, that's what you see there today. We've got then also pipeline trips. Pipeline trips are, again, the ones that are approved land use. We have anticipated what those will be and how they will impact our traffic system. We don't approve those unless they won't impact our traffic system, or if they do impact our traffic system, they have to mitigate. That's what traffic concurrency is about. And so Title 19 has a chapter in there, I think it's 1912, is concurrency. And that's what concurrency talks about. So we make sure those pipeline trips will not negatively impact our transportation system. We have included in this area in Gig Harbor North, we have pipeline trips that come from Village of Harbor Hill. It comes from what is phase 1A, 1B, but it's listed as a business park. That's what's reserved in our pipeline now. We have the church that is the property just south of Swiftwater that's been promoted as a church. And we have the park, which is essentially going to be phase 3. So we have our existing, we have our pipeline, we run it through our traffic model. Everything is looking fine. We don't have congestion to a failed level of service in our traffic model. Now, some people might say, well, it's already close to being failed. Well, that's someone's opinion, but that's not what is set in our transportation element as a failed intersection. So we, based on our existing traffic and the background trips, and based off of our future pipeline trips, we don't have failed levels of service at our intersections of Gig Harbor North. So what we've done is we have taken a look specifically related, bring it back now to the sports complex. We've looked at all 3 phases of the sports complex. When we looked at phase 1, 1A, 1B, we acknowledged that there was an existing business park already approved in the pipeline. The phase 1 project did a trip generation report. It identified that there were going to be fewer trips because of the sports complex phase 1 compared to the business park. Therefore, it's not going to make things worse. It's, if anything, going to make things better. Then I'm going to go on to phase 2. Phase 2 was an existing site that was in the existing column because it has had 3 fields from the Little League on there forever, before 2005. If I can go back to that picture, you can see the Little League field was there. So is phase 2 going to make traffic worse? No, it's not going to decrease the level of service. What it will do is it will take what is use 6 months throughout the year and make it 12 months throughout the year. But it's not going to increase the intensity because there's still going to be the same number of people using the fields at any one time. So therefore, phase 2 is accounted for in our traffic model. So what you see in the scope of work before you tonight is a limited traffic study that looks at phase 3 only. And that phase 3 will have a trip generation report prepared for it. We will run that trip generation report through our model like we do all the time and see if those added trips from the phase 3 trip generation report will cause a failure, congestion, level of service failure. I don't anticipate it will. It's not a very big site. It's less than 10 acres. And so I don't anticipate that less than 10 acres will cause a failure of our transportation infrastructure and the intersections that are in Gig Harbor North. So that's a quick summary of how we got to where we are with traffic modeling. I'm happy to pause there and answer any questions there might be on traffic related to the sports complex at this time.
Yeah, I do
Councilmember-
have a question. Do we have what the LOS is for those roundabouts?
As it sits currently today,
Yes.
I don't, it's in our transportation element. Yeah, I'm not sure what the level of service for those roundabouts is currently.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess I have one more question. We have a really good webpage for the sports complex with lots of questions and answers on there. And I know this is a little detailed, but is there any way that you could put some explanation on there about the traffic impact studies that have been done for that, since it does seem to be an area of concern for our citizens?
We can, what we could put on there is probably just the trip generation report that was prepared. Nobody really, unless you're a traffic modeler, wants to look at the output from these traffic models. It essentially, you either get into the very detailed tables that come out, or you get into just the bottom line. What's the level of service? There are images that can be produced. We can have our consultant produce those images that say, has a map of the area and says what the level of service is at the intersection, but that's about as detailed or what's that? Yeah, we could do a summary. But we will need to work with our traffic modeling consultant to do that work, because that's not, we don't usually make the summary or the pictures for our engineering staff to review as we go through the traffic modeling process.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Jeff, or Director Langhelm. A question on failed level of service. Would that even be considered a D? I know level of services are A, B, C, D, F. Would we claim a D as a failure, or is a D just, okay, it's bad, but we're not going to worry about it, and we're only looking for a failure when it hits an F version?
Level of service E is typically our
E.
failure level.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are we at, since we don't know right yet, we're only looking to see if it goes to an E then, right?
Correct.
Okay, so if
Though-
it went to the level just above it, we'd say we're okay.
Exactly. And I want to say that there are some levels of, there are some intersections in the city that have already been deemed that level of service E is acceptable. And that level of service F is acceptable, because let me give you the example, Pioneer and Harborview. That is level of service F. But the only way to, if you find that is not acceptable, then any development that comes in and adds one vehicle trip to that intersection will be denied concurrency. So, and then in order to get away from denying concurrency, you would have to mitigate, as I was talking about earlier. So the question is does the city want a developer to come in and mitigate that intersection? What that would mean is, do we want to make that 2 lanes in each direction, 3-way stop into a 3-lane or 2 lanes in each direction and a full-blown traffic light? I don't think anybody wants to do that, but that would be the only other way to do it. You accept some of these intersections at LOSF, or you have to mitigate for them.
All right, thanks.
Great, thank you. I don't see any other lights, so if you would like to continue,
Sure.
you can do so.
Sure, and this will be quicker. I'm just going to briefly talk about stormwater impacts. Similarly as to traffic, some of the stormwater impacts from the sports complex have already been anticipated for the developments that have been platted and partially developed already. So phase 1 and phase 3 in particular, and I you know what, I could bring up a map here real quick if I don't know if anybody's curious on which phase 3, phase 2, phase 1 looks like.
That'd be great, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Sorry, I didn't queue that one up. Just take a quick second. I will find an image of that and we'll bring that up. In fact, I'm just going to pull it from our website, that we have a great summary of what that looks like on our website. Oh, unless it doesn't want. Okay, almost there. Okay, again, this is an image that is already on our Gig Harbor Sports Complex website. If you simply Google Gig Harbor Sports Complex, this webpage will come up. Okay, so I've been talking about phases of the sports complex. Sports complex consists of phase one, which is this area to the north. And I apologize, this is oriented so that north is to the bottom right here. This is Harbor Hill Drive right here along the east side of phase one. Phase one has been split into 1A and 1B. 1A is the work that the YMCA is completing. 1B is the work that the city is completing. Phase two is the Little League fields down here in the very southwest corner sports complex. Those are where the Little League fields are now. Here's the YMCA, and then here's phase three. This is it's just immediately south of the YMCA. It's the treed lot today. And it is about at the intersection of Harbor Hill Drive and Sentinel Drive. I can leave that up as we talk. Because it's actually helped me. The phase one and the phase three properties, along with all the Costco properties and the YMCA, all discharge stormwater to this stormwater pond here. It's just to the west. That stormwater pond was sized for phase one to be a business park, just under in the 85 to 90% impervious level. And then it was sized to also accommodate the park, the phase three portion, what was called the park back then. And so we know that for phase one, we're going to be far under that 85, 90% impervious area. We're going to be closer to the 70%. So right off the top, we're already going to be discharging less stormwater to this pond than originally anticipated. So it's accounted for. I don't see any need to do further mitigation at that point. And then phase two, the Little League field, we have stormwater facilities already in place that have been there for years. We don't anticipate doing much, if any, additional impervious area added to phase two. So we don't think that there's going to be any need to mitigate for that because we're not going to be having additional impacts. Okay, so that's stormwater. Talk briefly about trees. I'll start with phase two. That's the easy one. It's already developed. We don't anticipate having much, if any, additional impervious area. So no change essentially in the trees for phase two. Phase one, we've completed a tree study, I should say, for all of the phases, including the stormwater pond site, including the YMCA. So we have a tree survey that we completed as part of phase 1B that identifies all those trees. We are trying to figure out, as part of the phase 1B project and the phase 3 project, how we're going to be mitigating for the trees that we will be removing from there, depending on the outcome of all of the rest of these studies. But there is minimum code requirements that we will be meeting to mitigate or offset the removal of trees. But we also are anticipating that we're going to be going above and beyond what is the minimum requirement and doing more than what a private developer would be asked to do. We're going to be doing, hopefully being able to mitigate for every tree that's removed. But we haven't finalized that. And it's going to cost the city more money if we do go down that path, but we'll be talking about that as we proceed. So that's trees. Phase 2, again, I'm going to move on to lighting. Phase 2, again, that already has lighting. That's already there. Phase 1, that one is anticipated will have high level lighting for the phase 1A portion. And then low level lighting for the phase 1B portion. Picture level lighting that you might see in our parks today. And they're low lights, they're 15, 20 foot tall. So minimal impact, also LED and directional. So we don't think there's gonna be much impacts at all. But as far as the phase 2-3 feasibility study, we are going to be reviewing lighting that's going to be proposed if there is a proposal to put lit turf fields, which I anticipate that's part of the feasibility study, what that will look like and what the lighting impacts, might be. So that will be a part of the phase 2 and 3 feasibility study, but it'll be just focused on phase 3 because phase 2 is already in existence. All right, so that's a quick summary related to the concerns that I've heard. Again, traffic, stormwater, trees, and lighting for what this phase 2 and 3 feasibility study will be providing. I'm happy to answer any more questions you might have and go from there.
Thank you so much. Any questions from council? Councilmember Wook?
Thank you. I also talked today to Director DeSimas. We were talking a little bit about the tree impact from the potential church property. And we were also talking about the urban forestry plan that we are getting ready to do, or we're getting ready to hear the results of. I think it's almost done and we'll be hearing the results of that. And what that means as far as tree canopy. And Director DeSimas, can you give us some insights into a little bit of the urban forestry plan and the tree canopy?
Thank you, council member, members of council, mayor.
Excuse me, point of order. Is the
State-
tree canopy on the agenda? I don't understand how that applies to the sports complex feasibility study.
Point taken. Can you explain how this directly relates to the sports complex when you're talking about the church property?
Sure. We had some citizens being concerned about the cumulative impacts of all the trees in that area, and that their trees will come down along with the sports complex trees. The trees on the other side of Harbor Hill Drive will also come down. Do we not want to talk about that this evening?
If I might suggest, we'll have a work session on this coming up very soon where Carl Director DeSimas and his staff and consultant will present on this to council holistically, and perhaps we could talk more in depth about that at that time. Mayor, while I have the mic, I might also note to council and anyone that's listening that within the contract for the consultant for phase 2 and 3 feasibility study, there will be a minimum of 2 public workshops or charrettes going over what the alternatives are, where staff and consultants will be on hand to be able to explain things such as tree retention and traffic generation to anyone who wants to listen to them talk about that, which they'll be very happy to discuss. So there will be plenty of opportunity on top of work sessions with the council moving forward. So there'll be plenty of opportunity. Additionally, we're hearing from Mr. Grimes this evening on the comprehensive plan, which has begun. And a large portion of that will be the transportation element, which will need to be updated consistent with our current growth as well as our projected growth. And so anyone, any citizen who has a suggestion for improvement for transportation, I would recommend listening to Mr. Grimes as well as connecting with Mr. DeSimas after the meeting. And it's all of these things are up for discussion right now. So lots of opportunity for public inclusion and input.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. I don't see any other lights, so I don't believe that there is any other questions. Thank you so much, Director Langhelm, for providing all of that information. That's wonderful. So then let's take a vote on this item. I will do a roll call vote. Sorry?
Mayor, we do need a motion in a second before. we
I'm
do the vote.
sorry. Yes, but public comment is allowed only if council votes that they would like to open public comment on this item. So I will ask council to please say aye if you would like to open public comment on this item.
Aye.
I think that was a majority. So yes, we will open public comment on this item. Anyone in the audience that wishes to speak, you can come forward. You'll have 3 minutes. If you will please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. My name is Oscar Roberto, live 4340 Borgen Boulevard, apartment 1325. I want to thank Jeff because he gave a really good explanation on the issue of traffic and how do they do. I would just like to know how well the model reflects reality. You have all these modeling things. How does it compare to the actual traffic you see today in there? That would be very useful information to have. And also, I think that when you're building several fields, looking at each individually doesn't really reflect what the whole complex is going to be, because that's really going to increase the usage of the fields that are using, for example, today, because you're going to be promoted as a regional sports complex, and that would be a big impact. The other thing I'd like to have an update is on, we talked several times about looking at other alternative fields. They are available at the school districts. They're also available at Penn Met Parks. And I haven't heard any updates on how this is going to compare to what we need to build, if we actually need to build phase 3 for the sports complex. And the last point I want to make is the residents of Gig Harbor really have expressed an interest in having a canopy of trees. They have expressed an interest in having nature walk areas. And we're going to take the trees down in there. We're going to take trees everywhere in Gig Harbor North. What's less for us to walk, what's less for us for recreation in the wooded areas. And I think the council needs to consider that before moving ahead and forging ahead with this phase 3 of the sports complex. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak on this agenda item? Okay, for those watching online, to raise your hand to speak, you can press the *9 button on your phone or the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. Okay, seeing none, I will close public comment on this agenda item and open it up for council deliberation. Councilmember Likens.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I want to thank staff for the excellent presentations tonight, answered a lot of questions. I did see some emails come in, and I know that Director Langhelm responded to one. It was super informative to me personally. So some type of summary like that out in the community on our website, I think would be great. And so to that point, I move to authorize the mayor to execute a professional services contract with BCRA for the sports complex phase 2 and 3 feasibility study in an amount not to exceed $125,233.
Second.
Okay, I think that was Councilmember Rodenberg. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, motion carries 6-0. Thank you, council. Moving on to item number 5 on the consent agenda, Resolution 1275, adopting revised city council guidelines and procedures. Councilmember Wook, would you like to state why you pulled this item off the consent agenda?
I pulled it off because there were lots of items on the consent agenda that I certainly support. This one I do not, and I wanted to vote. So that's why I pulled it off.
Okay. So is there any discussion on this item then? I'm Councilmember Rodenberg.
I have no discussion other than I think we should have public comment on this item when the time comes.
On item 5?
Yes.
Okay. Council, would you please put your lights on if you would like public comment on this item? That's the easiest way for me to see. Okay, we have a majority. So I will open public comment unless there are council questions for staff, which would be City Clerk Stecker ahead of public comment. Any questions? Okay, not seeing any. Anyone in the audience wish to speak on this agenda item? Okay, you can come forward. You'll have 3 minutes. And if you would please state your name and address for the record. Hold on one second. We're going to make sure your microphone's on.
Dr.
There
Robert
you go.
Stewart.
You can be
Whoa.
about 6 inches away.
Dr. Robert Stewart, 2813 Harborview Drive. The reason why I wanted to comment on this is that when I read it, the new section about the behavior and possible sanctions and discussion amongst council members seemed to have some constitutional problems for me. First of all, I think that it most likely muzzles the First Amendment rights of council members to talk about their positions on items when there's disagreement in the council. Secondly, as a voter, I feel that I have the right to know what each council member's position on a given item is. And currently, with the study sessions that you have, the minutes that are available to me just say that the council endorsed this to move forward for a vote. And so I don't know who discussed what, who was in favor of what, who disagreed. And so my rights as a voter are impaired because I can't tell when somebody comes up for reelection what their position was on X, Y, and Z. And then furthermore, after something is passed by the council, this new amendment really prohibits a council member from saying what their position was if they disagreed with the vote. They just have to say, I support the decision of the council. And so I want to know. And I realize there's a provision in there where I can directly pinhole somebody and then they are allowed to tell me their position. But I think that's the opposite of the way transparency should be for the citizens of Gig Harbor. And then there's another problem that I see, and that is that I believe that this proposed amendment could make it so that a majority of council members could suppress the participation of a minority member because they disagreed with them. And these sanctions would take them off committees potentially. And the language is so vague about what could prompt an executive session for disciplinary action for a council member who's been elected by the public to serve them and represent them. And if the person who's representing my opinion disagrees with the person who's representing somebody else's opinion, I think the public has a right to see that dialogue and how the decisions are made. We see that on C-SPAN in the Congress. We can see that in the state representatives, but we're precluded from seeing that with the city council. So thank you, Mayor and Council, for listening to me.
Oh, thank you very much. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak tonight on this agenda item? Okay, anyone watching online that wishes to speak, you can push *9 on your phone or the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Okay, seeing none, I will close public comment on this agenda item and open it up for council deliberation. Councilmember Likens.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I am very proud of this document. We had 3 all-day retreats as a council, and we came together and formed a statement of ethics and a code of conduct that is new to this over the last year. And I'm going to read on our public service agreements a statement. Disagreement and difference of opinion is an honored and respected feature of the government of Gig Harbor. Council members will acknowledge and respect each other's perspectives. So at the heart of what we do really is allowing for vibrant and active discussion and recognize that we will have a difference of opinion. But once a vote is made and multiple experts in parliamentary procedure, we are only individually 14.9% of the vote. And for the good of the city, we support, or at least say we may have taken a different approach, but this is the vote of the council and this is what's moving forward. And we put in that code of ethics so that we could maintain a decorum. And I'm very proud of this document. And I'm very proud of the work that we as council did together in talking through things and trying to make a really good council. I'm proud to be on this council. I'm proud to serve with these people. And I'm proud to support this document today. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other lights, so do I have a motion to approve Resolution 1275? Councilmember Barber,
I move to approve resolution 1275.
Seconded.
okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Any abstain? Okay, motion passes 5-1. Thank you, council. Okay. Moving on to the mayor's report, I actually wanted to turn this over to our city clerk, Josh Stecker, for a couple minutes to talk about some changes that we're making to the agenda for council meetings. We've been listening to a lot of feedback from the public about the desire to comment on consent agenda items. And so we're going to move the public comment period to the very top of the agenda so that comments can be taken on the consent agenda. And then each item of business will no longer be old business and new business. They'll just be business items, which will give us more flexibility when we have presenters and consultants. And there will be public comment on each of those items. So I kind of just explained it, but if there's any more detail that you'd like to provide, city clerks, I didn't think it would come out that well, so.
I actually don't think there's anything I can add to that.
Okay, okay. So yeah, so we're hoping that we'll be able to increase that people that are coming to speak will have the ability to speak on everything on the agenda. And it'll be right at the top of the meeting. So if you don't want to stay for items 7, 8, and 9, if we happen to have that many, you don't have to. So we're going to try it, see how it works with taking public comment at the top and then also on each item and see how it goes. But I'm excited about these changes. I'm glad that we're making them. And so that is the first part of my report. The second part is I and council are extremely proud of our city administrator, Katrina Knudsen, who this Saturday graduated from, I can't remember the name of the school, so you're going to have to give the details, with her master's in public administration. I'm sure there's a big fancy title that goes along with that, which I will also have you say the big long name and all your new initials behind your name. We are so proud of you. I know you hate this, but we are so proud of you. I would like to give Katrina a standing ovation and then present you with a gift from us. I love embarrassing.
I want Chief Busey to notice that there is one flower in the bouquet that is cougar color. It hasn't opened yet, but
I know, I'm still waiting for. I wish. Next time we'll bring cake. Would you like to
Maybe I'll
say-
bring cake on Thursday for all of you,
Yes, yes. Would you like to
since
say
I
a
have
few
free
words?
time now.
I
Um,
know.
Just want to thank the city a lot for well, thank you to the mayor and all the staff, especially going through my thesis. The last few months has been a little bit crazy. So I appreciate everyone sticking with me during that time. But I am now have my executive master in public administration from the University of South Dakota. It was an online program, obviously, but is very highly rated, commensurate with the University of Washington program, which costs $60,000 more. So I just want to thank the city for supporting me through this. And I know that it will provide dividends for the city moving forward.
It absolutely will. I can't wait to read your thesis, by the way.
My mom read it today and she, anyway, yeah.
Did she cry?
Yeah.
I might too. Thank you. Thank
My
you for
my thesis was
dedication.
on performance management and evaluations in the public sector, noting that one of our highest areas of improvement needed noted by the employees of this city was in our evaluation mechanisms. And so that is what the thesis is on. And Councilmember Storsett has requested I present the findings to you in a work session. So I would do that if you would all like to hear it.
I think that's unanimous. Thank you so much, City Administrator Knudsen. You have worked so very hard and we're really proud of you. And now, because you've got the mic, it's time for the City Administrator's report.
Thank you. I feel like I'm much better at this. Last week was the 54th Annual Professional Municipal Clerks Week. And during that time, it's a time to recognize all of the and celebrate the importance of municipal clerks in our local government, in particular, their role in transparency, record keeping, public records, et cetera. I have since learned that the municipal clerk was one of the first positions created by the founding folks who came over to this country, noting that it was a high position over in Europe where we came from. And it was in order to establish confidence in government for record keeping, that documents don't get burned and we have record of decisions that were made and have transparent interactions in all that we do. And we are exceptionally lucky to have Josh Stecker as our clerk and Tiffany Aliment as our assistant city clerk, who are on us all the time to ensure that we are abiding by all of our federal and state regulations to ensure full transparency and open government. So I would just like to take this moment to thank Josh and Tiffany, who couldn't be with us tonight, for their wonderful service to the city.
Just take, do you have a blue flower in there for the Mariners? Just take that out and make it.
Oh, they
I'm
did
just
win.
kidding. You don't have to do that.
And then lastly, I wanted to give a shout out to Keith Smith, our ITS manager. Prior to Keith coming on board, the city was transitioning from I can't remember what the system, ShoreTel to a MyTel system. And there were hundreds of phones purchased and a contract signed for services that the city ended up not utilizing. And in that were contracts with CenturyTel for upwards of $500,000. So this was a contract where we didn't utilize the equipment and we never utilized the service. And he inherited this and has been working with CenturyLink for over 3 years, where our account showed a $500,000 balance. And with his determination and being a little bit stubborn and very professional, I'm happy to report that last week that entire fee was removed from our bill, and we are now at a zero balance for our phone bills. So sincere thank you. And I thought it rose to the level of congratulations at a council meeting for a significant effort to save public funds from a fee that we should not have had to have paid.
Does that conclude your report? I was just making sure.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. That's amazing. I really, really appreciate that. All right, our next item is staff report, and this is our 2044 Comprehensive Plan Update Public Outreach presentation. And I will turn it over to our Community Development Director, Carl DeSimas. Thanks for being here, Carl.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Good evening, council. It is with great pleasure that I would like to introduce you to Mr. Bill Grimes. He is the consultant that is leading us through this process of updating our comprehensive plan. As you'll recall, a comprehensive plan periodic update is required by state under the Growth Management Act. We are required to have it completed by December of 2024. We are underway, and I can say that it's going very well so far. And Bill has really been helping us a lot. Bill comes to us with a lot of land use experience in planning. He's been doing this for a really long time. He's worked with the city a couple times previously, to my knowledge, once on the transportation plan when we really overhauled the transportation plan back in 2016. and came up with the gig on the go. And then he helped us again with our arts and culture element that we implemented and put into the comprehensive plan in 2018, I believe was the right year. So Bill knows the city pretty well, but there's always more to learn, and he really is a person who likes to learn. He's been here all day, I know, out there in the field, looking around at developments, and really getting his feet wet in Gig Harbor. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Bill and let him present to you, and then we'll both be available for questions that you have afterward. So thank you very much, Council, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carl. It's good to be back. And yes, I have been doing this for a long time. Sometimes I don't realize how long until someone tells me that I've been doing it for a long time. So a couple of meetings ago, I believe the city council had an opportunity to see and ultimately adopt a public participation program that we had drafted along with Carl and Robin to lay out some of the priority strategies of an update. What I'm hoping to be able to do tonight is talk about the process overall, and then some of the things that we're looking forward to doing as part of this update. And I can get as wonky and technical about this as you would like me to. I'm here all night. I don't have a meeting until tomorrow morning at 9. So just have at it. Is this going to work that way? Okay, thank you. So I'm here tonight, but it really is not quite a cast of thousands, but at least a cast of about a dozen people who will be working on this update with us. I come to it from a land use, urban design, and public engagement perspective. I'll be managing the process, but we have several other folks that we've worked with over the years who are also going to be involved in this process. People who live and breathe policy. People who are really into the transportation. I think you already know Kendra and Victor, who do some work with the city now. We also have an economist on board, Leland Consulting Group. We've worked with them for about 10, 15 years. And then we also have some environmental talent. So as we start thinking about the environmental consequences of where the plan might be heading, we're able to begin evaluating those things as well, and can take whatever environmental direction we need to take as the process evolves. So I expect that the 5 people you see on the screen are the people that you will likely actually see in person here in Gig Harbor at some point. But there may be others too from this list that you see show up every now and then. And I bet virtually everybody in the process is going to is on the diagram here is going to continue to contribute to the final product. This really doesn't work, but I like holding on to it. Can I do that? Okay. Gives me some sense of control. I like that. So we have a process that is essentially broken up into 2 separate but interrelated components. Where one is looking at the comprehensive plan and trying to figure out what we need to do for policy updates for the comprehensive plan as a whole. And then the second part of this, and City Administrator Knutson alluded to this, is a more technical, deeper dive into the transportation element so that we can begin to understand how the transportation network will need to evolve as our land uses evolve in this community. And that really is a very technical examination, and it will feed into the policy conversation for the balance of the plan. One of the reasons why we've done this is because you probably already know about PSRC and Vision 2050, but we need to make sure that we can demonstrate conformance with PSRC regional transportation goals. And they have a model in conjunction with Pierce County that we need to make sure we conform to. And so we'll be adopting their methodology, but we have to test it in a way that really suits Gig Harbor. What we're looking to do is to really be able to use this process to dig into some of the larger scale alternatives that we're going to be considering when we look at land uses and how we begin to distribute our transportation system and the demands on that over the entire network. So we do see these things converging as part of the process, but we have them broken out as separate scope elements because of the level of technical rigor associated with the transportation element. We are in the process now of really developing our level of understanding of what's going on in Gig Harbor in terms of what your existing land uses are, who's living here, who's working here, where the people work who live here. And also beginning to understand what you have on the books now for your existing policy framework. The city has done quite a lot of work in policy. And we want to make sure that this process really builds on that work that's been done in years past. And a lot of community engagement has informed it. So even though the community may be changing over time, we think that some of the principles underlying the policy framework still endure, and we want to make sure we have a good understanding of those. So I better put that down because I know I'm going to hit the laser button by mistake and it's going to cause problems. So here we are with the transportation element. It's a super diverse transportation environment and it changes during the course of the seasons in the year. You've seen it. We're trying to figure out ways that we can characterize that effectively so that we can begin to consider policy choices and how we can best guide the city in investing its transportation dollars and also establishing and reinforcing partnerships with our transportation agencies so that we can leverage whatever local energy we put toward this for a larger impact on the regional scale. And then the public participation plan, we really, and it's been a trademark of our practice. We really commit to learning from what the public has to tell us. I mean, even before it became fashionable, it was something that we found is particularly effective for getting plans that are more easily implemented. When the councils are going through their annual budget conversations, if there's a groundswell of political support for plan initiatives, it makes it easier for the councils to make its jobs and make its work programs adoptable and then to act on them. And so we really do try to make sure we have a comprehensive, progressive, memorable, effective, and transparent public process so that people who are involved in this can see the influence that their comments might have. Even if the process doesn't necessarily follow what they suggest, at least they have an opportunity to see why the reasoning behind the decisions that were incorporated in the plan. And we learn a lot. I was just thinking about this morning, is that every time that I've gone, and I can say this, I can use a big word like every time I go through a process like this, I learn more, and whatever I might have in my thinking going into the process invariably changes. I learn a lot from the community members that we have an opportunity to speak with, and it helps inform the perspective that we're able to apply to our plan writing. We really do want to find ways to involve people where they are, and whether it's asking people to come to an event in the council chambers, although since COVID, that's something that we don't necessarily see a lot of success with, or going out to where people are shopping or going to the post office or at a sporting event or maybe some kind of a city event or festival. We really do want to find ways that we can have those personal one-on-one conversations with individuals. And we also want to nurture a civic conversation among participants in the plan. Maybe people come to this process with different points of view, different ideas about what's important. We get a chance, or we create the chance for people to come together and talk about things over which they may disagree, but can still find a way to move forward. Councilman Rodenberg, earlier, I was talking about the power of pragmatism, and I think that's something that we really want to make sure we can build into our plan so that whatever we come up with is something that is achievable and implementable, and those conversations between community members really help to propel that forward. We've also learned that online access is crucial. We've been building project websites since 2004, and that's actually quite a long time ago. And they continue to evolve, and we've made them more and more functionally robust as a result of COVID. So whether it's trying to find ways to emulate a back and forth dialogue or using tools like the city's flash vote survey mechanism and just making a nice, robust, integrated online presence is something that we'll do as a matter of course. The city is building a website now, and we're going to continue to add content and functionality to that as the process continues. So what we will be doing again is updating an engagement calendar so we can identify specific events that we'll be able to incorporate into this process. And this is something that will change pretty much on a weekly basis as we refine and have our process respond to what we're learning. This is an early draft of what we did for Gig Harbor, so the dates are a little bit off. And I don't expect you to be able to read this. But it begins to illustrate that we're calling out very specific engagement activities, timelines, who's responsible for doing these things, and what we hope the outcomes will be from each event, so that we can see this continuity and this progression from one event to the next. It also helps keep us on track. It helps staff stay on track, and it helps us represent where the process is headed and a little bit of the logic behind the trajectory of the overall planning process and the trajectory of the public engagement process. And so we'll be able to use this to highlight those turning points or milestones in the process where we have to make decisions. We have to start making progress on where the plan is headed. And this gives us an opportunity to detail how our events correspond to those very important parts of the planning process. So the first wave is where we are now. As Carl alluded to, we had a couple of focus group conversations this morning. We're going to have 4 more tomorrow on topics of interest. Let's see, today we talked about economic development, environmental, shoreline and parks. Those are the 2 meetings. And tomorrow we're talking about land use, housing, downtown harbor transportation, airway and arts and culture and history. We can talk about that in a little bit. We're also working actively with the Planning Commission. So your Planning Commission is really getting into this in detail. I mean, I've got my sleeves rolled up now. They have their sleeves rolled up and they're getting into it. We had 2 commissioners attending some of the events this morning. So actually 3 of the Planning Commissioners were there. So we've had opportunities to get them built into the process. We're not empaneling a separate advisory committee for this process. We're relying on the Planning Commission to do this. And so every meeting they're getting an update from staff, and we're coming to them with questions to see how we can do our job better and also empower them to speak to their colleagues, their acquaintances, their constituencies in the community and get a buzz generated about this process. The website is online. We're also going to be having a planning fair on the 20th of this month. We've been casually calling it a Jubilee. I don't know if that's in honor of Coronation Week, but still, I kind of like the term. I'm not letting that one go away, but we're having a planning fair here right outside of City Hall so people can take a look at what's going on with this process. And I'm hoping to be able to have a conversation about community vision begin at that planning fair. So yes, it is a celebration about Gig Harbor's look to the future, but we also want the conversation to be a meaningful one. If people are going to be there, we want to give them something to chew on and comment on. And so we're going to be looking at what the city's adopted for vision, and we'll have this public event as an opportunity for people to begin considering where that's headed and if it's still relevant for Gig Harbor's next 20 years. And then some of the focus group topics, Carl and I were both taking notes furiously today, and I imagine we'll continue to take notes furiously tomorrow. I followed that up with a drive around town, and we try to take notes both in words and in maps so that we have a sense of spatial differentiation in a community. So you can see, yeah, hey, it was sunny. I went outside, I had the maps and a pen in hand, so I started doodling on some of these things. But it gives me an opportunity to begin to put or to attach immediately what I'm hearing in the conference room to what it's like outside. And so I'm hoping to be able to infuse that throughout the process so we can see this kind of spatial representation of what people are talking about. I mean, people generally see their communities as neighborhoods, and this is a nice vocabulary to begin injecting into the conversation really at the outset. Okay, do not even attempt to read this. But this is something that excites the policy wonk in me. Right now, your existing comprehensive plan, like many comprehensive plans in this state, is structured as a plan of specific elements. There's a land use element, there's a transportation element, economic development element, arts and culture element. And while that is a completely effective way of writing a plan, it's not always the easiest way to use a plan as an implementation tool. And so what we've done over the years is we've developed something that we call a policy framework where we condense all of the bones and muscle from the plan, all of the goals and policies that are in the individual elements, and compress them into a single policy document. And what that allows us to do is that it allows us to benefit from acknowledging that there are goals and there are policies that might serve to benefit one or more of the planning topics. And so the first step in this process, and we've completed this now, is to do that dissection of the plan and take a look at where a land use policy also is relevant to transportation or to economic development. And so it helps us make our policy framework more efficient. So as a city official, you're able to take a look at a goal or a policy direction and know that you are fulfilling your transportation aims and you're going after your land use aims. It's the two birds with one stone kind of an approach, instead of having to go through the various elements and see where you find a policy that supports a particular action. It also gives us a great opportunity to make sure that all of our policy is internally consistent. We were working with another community here in Puget Sound area, pardon me, and they had about 850 policies, and many of them were similar but different. And so depending on who is reading the individual policies, there is an opportunity for maybe a slightly different interpretation of what you might do. So this gives us an opportunity to essentially exercise the inconsistencies and come out with something that's going to be internally consistent and effective. It also makes it easier for the community to start thinking about ways to implement policy and to prioritize those implementation actions that you might take, because you'll find that there's an implementation action that all of a sudden is related to maybe a dozen different policies. And maybe that's something that's going to be more important to you than an implementation item that relates to only one. And so this policy framework makes this stuff a lot more transparent. I tell you, I have been doing this for a long time, and I've been struggling with policy inconsistency and redundancy, and this is a wonderful tool to help us do it. We started doing it a little bit with Gig Harbor on the arts and culture element, and decided to only take it just a little bit on the way. But now as part of the comprehensive plan update, it gives us a chance to do it and take it the rest of the way. So I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I'm super excited about the opportunity and how that might help the community implement its long-range plan. Okay. All right, so I'll end it on that note, but please, now's a great opportunity to ask questions of me regarding the process.
Well, thank you so much for that presentation. That was wonderful. We have several lights on. I think Councilmember Henderson, you're first. and
Thank
I'm
you,
gonna
Mayor.
try to-
Thank you, Bill. That was good. Very good. It looks like you're going to do a couple deep dives into transportation and how that's affected by land use. That was at least what I took from this. I had one question on that. So is the intent to see how we can integrate the land use and transportation issues? I mean, or is it just how we can expand roads so we can get more cars through? Are we taking a different approach than maybe a traditional planning thing that says if we got all these other houses, let's make the road wider? That's my first question. The second one's going to be on the touch points for the city council. I was looking at your plan, the timeline, and unless I missed it, and maybe I did, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you're going to roll out a final plan to the city council on July, August timeframe, 2024, and this is due December of 2024, right? So usually by July, August, you're about ready to wrap this up. Are there going to be any touch points for the city council before that?
I hope so. I'll answer
Okay,
the second
I didn't
question
see it on
first.
your schedule, as why I'm
Yeah,
asking.
yeah, I hope so. I hope that we have opportunities to have regular reports to council
Okay.
on this, right? And I also hope the council members are eager participants in the process too. And that as we have community events, that we see city council people coming there and also encouraging people to participate in the process too. So yes, we'll come to you. We're hoping that council comes to us too as part of the process. I'll have to talk with Carl and with Robin about the frequency of those touch points. I don't know that they'll be regular, but they will likely coincide with evolutionary steps in the plan. Sure, you're aware of what's going on. We also hope to have at least one joint planning commission and city council confab where everybody can get together and the council can learn about the city council or the planning commission's experience in the process, and you can also speak to the planning commission about some of your priorities too as council people.
It would certainly be good if we could have that early on before things get too solidified, because then it's not of any use for us. Otherwise, we're just, it would look like we're holding up the ship if we say, gee, we didn't like that direction.
Right.
Thank you.
Understood. Thank you. And as far as the transportation land use paradigm, that's one of the reasons why we wanted to involve Victor in this process, actually, as well as Kendra, is because we want to create a set of scenarios that manage that land use transportation relationship differently. And maybe one is putting more emphasis on vehicular capacity and throughput. And maybe another one is putting more emphasis on multimodal connections and quality of trip rather than duration of trip. So, but I don't know yet how that's going to pan out. And that's one of the reasons why we're having these conversations now early on with the community, so we can begin to understand how to frame some of these questions and start thinking about the values that are needing to be explored and how these relationships pan out.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Barber.
Yes, thank you very much. That was very interesting, and I'm looking forward to hearing from Carla and Robin and company on how and when they want us to make our voices heard. Or we could call you every day, Bill. I'm sure that would not be helpful. But I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you get to that vision that you were talking about. To me, I'm a strategic communications person, so I'm used to, this is my goal, this is how I'm going to get it. And this seems to be, I like the way you were describing it with pieces overlapping, because the way that I look at the plan right now, it's kind of disparate pieces that don't always mesh. But how do you get to that vision, which seems like it's the first cog in the wheel? But it looks like we're having focus groups and we're talking about specifics before we're talking about that center's cog.
Right, right. I get it. So the focus groups are really a creation of my selfishness. It's an opportunity for me to learn about what's on people's minds. So we're not coming to the focus groups with proposals. We're coming there with questions. And so what I'm hoping to get out of the focus group conversations is some insight into the hot topics that are on people's minds in this community, and then some of the issues that those topics represent. So that's happening, and that will definitely influence how the vision gets refined. But there's another part of the answer that I also think is important, is that whether it's been explicitly stated or not, the community has a vision. And so we found that in the parks, and I believe the arts and culture chapters of the comprehensive plan, there is a vision statement that is establishing the foundation for all of the goals and policies that are in that element. There is not an overarching comprehensive plan vision that I have yet found. So what I'm doing is I'm going through each of the elements, and I'm actually going to be doing that tonight after we break. Now that I have the policy framework in hand, we're going to go through each of the individual elements and begin to interpret how those goals that are in the individual elements begin to establish this framework for vision. And so I'm going to take a shot at piecing something together. And that's what I hope we can begin testing on the 20th. And until the plan is adopted, I will be thinking of the vision as a working vision, because it will go through an element of refinement as the process continues, as we begin to dig into the trade-offs and the priorities in a little bit more detail. The vision will continue to evolve. Okay, third thing is that I think that a vision as a verbal statement representing a snapshot of 2024 is every bit as important as you suggest, because it is the touchstone to which every goal and policy will be held to make sure that it's fitting. I'm also hoping to have a spatial vision incorporated into this plan, so we can begin to really get at how different neighborhoods of the community might have different challenges or expectations or aspirations, and use that to really dial in the plan at a highly sensitive level related to the different policy issues. So that's where my mind is on vision right now. I do think that it is really worthy of a focused public conversation, and I'm hoping to make that part of every conversation that we have, so that we have that opportunity to check in and see if we're on track.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Martin.
Thanks for the presentation. So question to you is, are the people that you've engaged so far, our residents so far, understanding what a comprehensive plan is? And thinking about how do we get more people engaged in this plan, especially knowing that many people work outside of Gig Harbor, maybe even Pierce County, have a long commute, have a lot of things going on in their lives once they get home with children and family and maybe taking care of parents, et cetera. How do you plan to reach out to as many people as we can so we have as broad of diverse opinions as we can as we look at this comprehensive plan? So this is going to directly impact our city's policies. Thank you.
Right, and that both really, really important. You know, as a planner, I tend to retreat to my bubble, you know, and I need to check myself when I'm talking with folks and make sure that we're really speaking about what a comprehensive plan is, and that it's understood what the opportunities are, what the challenges might be, as well as the requirements to get it done. And so I don't know if everybody that we were talking to today understood what it was about, but based on the thread of the conversation, I think that they had a good idea. But that's a good reminder to me to make sure that that's something that we cover in our conversations tomorrow. As far as breadth of engagement, I think imbuing a level of credibility into this process is really important, particularly in smaller communities like Gig Harbor, where people tend to really have confidence in their personal relationships, families, coworkers, city government. And so I'm hoping that anybody who learns about this process gets challenged or excited enough about it that they'll talk about it with somebody else. And that I really hope that we're able to build that secondary buzz about this process. And so that means that every time we have an opportunity to have a conversation with someone, it's interesting to them. And it's something that they do want to talk about. So that's not always easy to do if what you're wanting to do is to figure out a way to talk to everybody in the community and have a broad outreach. But what we can do is we can publicize the availability of information related to this process. Just today, Carl and I were talking about a postcard mailer that would introduce people to the process, and there would be, you know, a QR code and a quick link into the project website, so that people who become interested in this process can figure out how to track it and get involved. I do think that the online mechanism, even though it's not necessarily my first choice for a conversation, it's a great way to get information out and to elicit interest in a process. And so we're working with the city to develop content that's going to be interesting, will be direct in terms of posing questions that might be of interest to people, rather than just necessarily, you know, providing information that can be pretty esoteric. You know, who wants to talk about PRC transportation models? Okay, I mean, it's a fairly small crowd. But, you know, when we start talking about some of the trade-offs that you were just mentioning, Councilman Henderson, about, you know, how are we dealing with our transportation system and our land use system and some of these trade-offs that we might just be taking for granted, but here's an opportunity maybe to question it. So those are types of things we want to make sure we build into those conversations. We were working on a comprehensive plan project a few years ago with another community, and we had an engagement process that we thought was actually pretty robust. But we heard some feedback from the council at that point, who didn't necessarily think we had enough numbers in our process to really justify acting on a comprehensive plan. And so we did a statistically valid follow-up survey. And we asked people if they were interested in, if they knew about the process, if they were interested in it, and if they chose to participate in it. We found that 87% of the population knew about it. 50% of them were 50% were interested, and the 13% that we could document actually were involved in the process. And so that was helpful for me. You know, if we can make it in the public eye enough so that people are aware of it, and do it in a way so that there's an immediate tie to how it's relevant to their day-to-day living, then I think we've done, you know, a laudable job in getting the information out there. And if they choose to come and participate, we certainly want to reward them with a process that's exciting and meaningful. And we do things like pop-up stations. We were working in San Juan County where we went to 4 of the islands and set up a tent in front of the grocery store or in front of the post office where everybody goes on the island. And we had conversations with people that were just fascinating. And so we may wind up looking at something like that here in Gig Harbor as well.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Wook.
Yes, thank you for your presentation very much. And did I hear you say that you were involved with Gig on the Go?
Yes,
That was great.
it was a fun process.
It was a really fun process, and that's why our citizens got involved. And you made it friendly and you made it reachable. And it seemed to me like a lot of people really did get involved in that. And I hope that that's the kind of engagement that you're going to be working for in the future for this project. I think the last time we did a citizen visioning project was maybe back in 2015, 2016 for the city, where the citizens were actually involved in that visioning. And I think we had a lot of citizen involvement at that time, coming in for lots of meetings and lots of dots on on boards. So yeah, it's very important that all of our citizens be involved in as many meetings as possible. I think they would like to feel welcomed for that. You mentioned there was a calendar. Is that a calendar of events that's happening? You said it would be almost updated on a regular basis that would be online?
Yeah, I'm not sure that the calendar that I showed a quick screenshot of is going to be online. That's more of an internal management tool for us. But I do want to make sure once we identify the events that we want to hit, that we have those on the calendar. I'm a very strong believer in setting a schedule of events early on and sticking to it so that people can plan and make sure that, you know, yes, we're there. So we're in the process of identifying those events that make sense for us to hit. And then programming those out.
And will those events be available on May 20th?
That's a great question. I think they should be. I don't know if we'll have that done, but I would like to have some kind of a preliminary schedule for the 20th.
That would be really good, at least the first couple of ones, so folks can get involved and know what's happening. So yeah, I look forward to this process. I look forward to our citizens being involved. And I sure hope you can get the engagement going on this like you did for Gig on the Go. It was just a really outstanding citizen involvement, outstanding presentation on your part. And I look forward to this one now. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. I still had a couple lights on, Martin and Barber. I'm assuming that that's okay. I just want to make sure there weren't additional comments. Thank you again so much for your presentation and for all the work that you have done and will be doing. We're looking forward to seeing the community get involved.
Well,
So
thank you very
thank
much.
you. Community Development Director, did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
I don't, Mayor. Thank you. But thank you, Mayor, for all of your, or Mayor and Council for all of your questions. Very helpful and jotted down. We jotted down a lot of notes over here, so I'm taking all of that into account. So really
Great.
appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you both. Okay, I will open up public comment on non-agenda items. So if there is an agenda item or something you'd like to give comment on, not on the agenda tonight, you can come forward. Okay, not seeing anyone online. If you would like to comment on an item not on tonight's agenda, you can raise your hand by pressing the *9 button on your phone or the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. Okay, seeing none, I will close public comment on non-agenda items and I will open it up for council reports and comments. Councilmember Wook.
Yes, thank you. Last Wednesday, KGI Watershed met. Director Langham was there representing the city, and Josh Hurd was there from Pierce County Health Department. And it was all about water. Gig Harbor gets our water from the groundwater. And Director Langham said that 2/3 of city residents and businesses get their water from Gig Harbor. 6 wells, 1,500 gallons a day are taken out of our wells, 200 gallons per minute. And there are about 4,500 city water accounts. So I thought that was really interesting. High quality water is coming out of the ground, and so there are 43 miles of pipe in 7 miles of city. And there's a lot of pipes running around, and redundancy is needed in some of our areas. We have good fire flow, which is important for our fire department. We're working on a new well in well number 11 in Gig Harbor North, and this will be helping Gig Harbor North and St. Anthony to provide redundancy in case there are any problems there. So the only thing I think that Director Langham mentioned was that we need a policy for drought conditions at some point in time. So I'm sure that's coming pretty quickly. So I thought it was really interesting that aquifers that we take our water from are pulling from water that may coming from many, many miles away. So I thought that was very interesting. Josh Hurd also reported from the Pierce County Health Department, and he reported that arsenic is a natural occurring thing in water quality about 200 feet deep. And I believe that most of our wells are 1,000 feet deep. So we're doing very well there. And he also said, which I thought was interesting, so something that's coming to the forefront now is about saltwater intrusion. And once salt water gets into an aquifer, it needs to be decommissioned. So I thought that was interesting. So anyway, Ecology sets limits on gallons per well per day in Kitsap County, which is a rural area. It was interesting to know that over the aquifers, there are impervious limitations, what can be happening over an aquifer. Prohibitive uses are landfills, underground injection wells, metals mining, wood treatment facilities, pesticide manufacturing, petroleum refining, storage of petroleum, et cetera, and aquaculture, which needs a farm management plan. So thanks for that information on our groundwater to everybody who was at the KGI Watershed meeting. It was very, very informative. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Barber.
Yes, thank you. At our last meeting, I discussed my concerns about downtown's vitality with everyone. And since then, I've been talking to even more people and hearing more concerns. And so tonight I wanted to offer a possible solution, or at least a roadmap to a solution for that might help address, or at least have people heard about their concerns. So before I tell you what my solution is, I want to make sure that I want to stress to everyone in this room, and especially the people who are online, that we as a city entity are working really hard on process improvement and ways to find solutions to the concerns that we're hearing in the community. Our staff have gone to Kennewick to meet with their counterparts there, and they'll later in the year head to Renton to hear more from their counterparts, because there are cities that have different solutions that might work for us. And we all know that there isn't one solution for 200 problems. But oftentimes, though, I believe that change begins with listening and hearing the concerns of others. And we've been doing that a lot individually, but tonight I would like to ask the city administrator to establish a formal listening session sometime before the end of the summer. Again, I recognize that everyone is really, really busy and has a lot on their plates. So I'm very concerned about overloading, especially our staff. But I'm also concerned about our city and the concerns of people who I've been talking to. What I envision is a couple-hour session where anyone who wants to do business with the city or has felt discouraged from doing so, or anyone in the city who wants to attend to talk to us about their challenges and wishes working with the city can come and address us in a similar format to our public comment during meetings. And my thought is that we as city council and the mayor and appropriate city staff will listen and provide a summary report and possibly, I'm saying general recommendations, but recommendations may be too strong a word, maybe general directions within a reasonable time frame that the city administrator sets. And I believe this session is a great way for us to hear the concerns and the challenges and then have a pathway to address them combined with the information we're already getting from other cities that we're visiting. Research shows that listening to people like this can go a long way to allaying concerns. People want to be heard. So I'm asking that we schedule the session as soon as our leadership team has a chance to do so, recognizing I don't want to stress everybody out any more than we already have. So that's my comment for tonight.
Thank you very much. And I'm sure we'll have many conversations in the near future about how to accomplish that and have that listening session. So thank you for bringing that forward. I don't see any other lights. Announcement of upcoming meetings is attached to your agenda. So take a look at that to find out what is coming. It's subject to change, but usually we stay pretty tight with that. So looking forward to seeing you all at upcoming meetings. And if there's nothing else for the good of the order, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
I think everyone seconded. Meeting adjourned. Good evening, everyone. Have a good night.